Vietnam is a country in constant motion. Without a good set of wheels, it's easy to get left behind. That's especially true for Vietnamese wheelchair riders like Quan Dien. He lost his legs in the war with Cambodia in the early 1980s.
Cũng có té một lần. Tức là cái dốc nó có cái gờ nè. Đi nhanh quá đụng vô cái dội ra thì người mình nó theo quán tính nó bay ra chứ.
Because the streets of his neighborhood aren't wheelchair friendly, Quan mostly stays home in a small apartment. To make ends meet, he rents his back room workshop to another wheelchair rider, Tong Geong, who contracted polio as a child.
Việt Nam mình còn thiếu sót nhiều lắm. Họ chưa có tìm ra cái cách giải quyết để cho người khuyết tật. Họ phải làm sao? Nhưng mà họ thường là làm cái này theo cái kia nhưng mà họ không nghĩ để tiện lợi cho ai hết. Cho nên đến người khuyết tật nhiều cái cũng thiệt thòi.
But a world away, there's a new wheelchair, and it's making an impact.
Hit it hard and nothing happens.
Ralph Hotchkiss is an engineering professor at San Francisco State who's been thinking about wheelchair design for a long time.
Very strong. Can come down a high curb, hit hard, nothing happens. Nothing fails. This wheel, there's no way I can break it.
Wow. After becoming paralyzed in a motorcycle accident 30 years ago, Ralph started out just trying to make a better wheelchair for his own use. But he ended up making a bigger breakthrough with something he calls the RoughRider.
It was necessary to come up with the RoughRider because there was no other wheelchair that worked well enough in all of the difficult situations in developing countries. Everything you do, you have to go long distances over rocky or sandy or muddy roads.
Ralph gathered design ideas from around the world. The front wheel comes from a shopping cart in Zimbabwe.
Very flexible, very light, made out of auto tire retread rubber.
Ralph and his associate, Mark Krizak, showed me the advantages of a RoughRider over standard hospital chairs, which are much less stable. Wow. Its standard parts, like bicycle tires, make it less expensive to repair. After years of tinkering, Ralph decided the RoughRider was ready for the rigors of the developing world.
Tôi gặp ông ấy là lần đầu tiên là tôi thấy như có một cái dòng điện mà nó bắt nhau ở trong cái cuộc đời này. Chúng tôi nhìn với nhau một cách thân ái vô cùng.
In 2006, Quan Dien was approached by Ralph to produce the RoughRider in Vietnam.
Tôi thấy là cái hai người của hai bờ đại dương gặp nhau để chúng ta làm cái xe lăn này.
Mr. Tuan makes the RoughRider using locally available materials and inexpensive labor. It's Ralph's vision that the RoughRider should be easy and cheap to make any place in the world. His associate, Mark Krizak, checks in with Mr. Tuan whenever he can.
It's been how long? 1 year since I was here.
He's brought the latest innovation from San Francisco with him.
And now all you have to do is copy this exactly as it is, and you'll have another size smaller.
As always, there's no charge for the design. Ralph's technologies are open source. And his Whirlwind Wheelchair network also helps raise money from Western foundations to help pay the $175 cost of the chair.
Wheelchair users don't make the market. They can't afford to buy their own wheelchairs. So what Whirlwind does is not only just transfer the technology to factories like Kin Tong, but we also market the chairs. We've tried to raise the money so that they can actually sell the chairs.
With Whirlwind's help, Mr. Tuan regularly donates his RoughRiders to those most in need. While we were there, we found him at a disabled athletes tournament giving away chairs to the participants, including Tong Geong, who we'd met earlier in Quan's back room.
Thi đấu thì nó thấy thoải mái, không bị vướng cái tay sau hay là.
After the game, Tong went for a ride through his neighborhood.
Ngại quá, cứng xe, ở ra sau nó có té không? bật ra làm sao không sợ té, còn mấy xe kia bật cái nhõng ben lên mà.
Đây cái gì?
Thắng.
Đây khi nào chạy nhanh là thắng.
Thắng lại mình gài cho đứng lại.
Ton may be sold, but his friend and landlord Quan has his doubts.
Cái này đâu bằng đâu. Đi xe này thấy ngon không?
Ngon, đi ngoài đường đã lắm, đi nhẹ, đi ngoài đường nhẹ.
Lăn nhanh á.
Quan says his old chair suits him better.
Bây giờ tôi lên cái xe này rất dễ.
Dạ.
Còn xe kia lên xuống không được.
À, anh thử rồi thì anh không
Thử
lên
rồi,
xuống được.
xuống nó cái tay mình chống xuống dưới đất này thì lại mình nó không đủ lực.
Dạ.
The first rule of wheelchair provision is do no harm. You can give someone a wheelchair and it can be a very inappropriate wheelchair. It'd be like, giving somebody a little sports car, even if it's the best Mercedes-Benz sports car in the world, and the person lives in Alaska in the wintertime, and they're never going to be able to use that.
Mark heard about Quan's concerns, so he decided to pay him a visit and brought Mr. Tuan along as well.
Ông tên là Mark.
Nhớ không? Chú nhớ con không? Nhớ không?
It turns out, Quan got his first chair from Mr. Tuan more than 20 years ago.
Tự nhiên cũng xúc động ghê nha. Gặp nhau cũng xúc động ghê lắm.
Quan says the RoughRider's footrests are of no use to him, but Mark explains that the chair is designed to be easily modified.
So go ahead and use your tools and fix it. Let's do it. Let's do it right now.
Không, cái này chỉ cần cho con một cái đồ bám này.
Within minutes, they've raised the footrest to create a step.
Lên dễ dàng. Dễ dàng hơn.
Yeah, easier, right? Much easier. Yeah. Much
And they see another benefit of the modification.
Mua gì bỏ đây.
Ok.
Ah, there you go. You can use the foot pedals to carry things even.
Chở vậy là khỏe. Vậy mà còn chắc ăn đó chú, không có sợ bị ngã ngửa. Đè vậy chắc ăn à.
Quan decides to keep the chair after all. For Ralph, it's been the same story all over the world. He's brought the RoughRider to dozens of countries, including Mexico, Iraq, and South Africa, through partnerships with several factories abroad.
I would like to see Whirlwind Wheelchair become unnecessary as soon as possible. I would like to help to develop a self-sustaining competitive industry of wheelchair building all over the world. Once the marketplace is populated, hopefully by then there will be so many people working on inventing wheelchairs, making wheelchairs better than ever, that maybe in 10, 20, 30 years we won't even recognize today's chairs. They'll be history.
On the final day of the ping pong tournament, Mr. Tuan helps present awards to the athletes, many of whom are now using his chairs. And afterwards, everyone gathers for a banquet. On this night, the RoughRider seems to be the star of the show.
Frontline World's Digital Dumping Ground is available on DVD. To order online, visit shoppbs.org or call 1-800-PLAY-PBS.